O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. So welcome once again. In this letter number 66, we have already completed 2 sessions. And before we start today, the 3rd session, we'll just do a quick recap of what we have already completed in our last session. And then we will proceed from there. So I will also share the slides with you. Okay. So previously, as we know that this letter is written by Mahatma K.H. to A.O. Hume in 1882. And in this, the theoretical teachings about the rounds, the globes, and the root races, all these teachings are given in this letter. So till now, we have seen that Mahatma Ji mentioned in all the kingdoms, the monad has to pass through 7 great classes. So this part we have already covered in our last session. And in every kingdom, there are 7 kingdoms on every globe, and the monad has to pass through the 7 classes in each kingdom. Like in the human kingdom, there are 7 root races. Similarly, in the other kingdoms also, there are 7 great classes. And these classes are divided according to their occult properties, according to the relative proportion of the 7 universal principles which they contain. This we have to keep in mind, that all the kingdoms are divided in this fashion. And so Mahatma Ji tells us that the analogy can be drawn from the human principles. So we should study the human principles very well. Then he mentioned that the total number of existences and number of existences in each class, these figures are secret because they are profoundly interwoven with psychological mysteries. By only the adepts know the exact figures. And by knowing these figures, it gives them great power. So it is not given to common man. Even the high chelas are not given this until their initiation as adept. Then he mentioned that though he did not give the total number of existences, but he mentioned that within the solar Manvantar, the number of existences of the monad is fixed. Now, solar Manvantar is a very, very long duration. It means the duration of the entire solar system, from the time the solar system came into existence till the time it goes into pralay. And then after the period of solar pralay, then again a new solar system commences. So that is called a solar Manvantar. And so the number of existences of the monad within this period, that is fixed. Then for the first time, he gave one figure, that is 777. This figure is 777 is the number of incarnations of a man on each globe as he passes through the root races, sub-races, and branch races on that globe. So on each globe, man's incarnation is 777. Then he mentioned about the rounds. The 5th round is not commenced on our earth, but 5th round men have been coming since last few thousand years. And he said that Plato and Confucius, they were 5th rounders, and Lord Gautam Buddha is a 6th rounder. But it does not mean that the children of these advanced men, they will also be advanced. That is not necessary. They are like any other fourth rounder. Our current round is the fourth round. So now let us see further. So I think we completed till 24. This is what we completed. Plato and Confucius were fifth rounders. Now further we move to the next slide. Basically, this is the last part of the letter, but after completion here, then Mahatmaji has given some supplementary notes, which he has explained using a diagram. So in this slide, he mentions that our mystic terms in their clumsy retranslation from Sanskrit into English are as confusing to us as they are to you, especially to M. Unless in writing to one of us, takes his pen as an adept and uses it from the first words to the last. In this capacity, he is quite as liable to slips as any other man. So Hume had this confusion about the fifth round men because Mahatma M had mentioned something. Now, what Mahatma KH is saying that these terms, English, the language English doesn't have equivalent terms of Sanskrit. And so it is very difficult to convey the meaning to Hume. And the way the letters are written in writing to you, it is not that Mahatma Ji is actually picking up his pen and writing these letters. These letters were precipitated in many occult ways. And in that process, it is liable that some slips do happen. So Hume or Sinnett, they misunderstand the meaning. For example, these letters were conveyed through their chelas, HPB, and a few other chelas. So it was a process of precipitation. And these slips were likely due to that. And in the end, he mentioned, no, we are not in the fifth round, but fifth round men have been coming in for the last few thousand years. But what is such a petty stretch of time in comparison with even 1 million of the several millions of years embraced in man's occupancy of earth in a single round? So in this present round, in our fourth round, man has been on this fourth globe, that is the earth, for several millions of years. That's a very long time. And it is nothing as compared to a few thousand years since these fifth round men have started coming. Now, after this, Mahatma Ji has given some additional notes and he advised Hume to carefully examine them. So there was this diagram. This figure was actually drawn by his chela, Jwalkul, and this figure represented development on a single planet. So to the left side on the slide, the circle that you see, that represented a single planet when Jwalkul drew it. But Mahatma KH added a few words to make the same diagram represent a whole Manvantrik chain of worlds. That means all the 7 globes of one round. See, because it is an analogy, just like how there are 7 rounds, then there are 7 globes, then there are 7 root races. So the same septenary representation can be shown by this one diagram. So though Jwalkul drew it just for one planet, one globe, but Mahatma Ji applies it to all 7 globes. Now we will consider it first for a single globe. So if you consider that the circle drawn in the figure, the large circle, that is our Earth. So for the time being, please ignore what is written on it, globe A, globe Z, and Earth. So please ignore those words. They were added by Mahatma KH later on. Just consider the outermost circle and consider that to be the complete circle, to be our Earth. Then in that case, the arrows which are shown around the circle, they indicate the direction of evolutionary impulse, the descending or the ascending evolutionary impulse. The Roman numbers which are given, you can see the Roman numbers which are close to the center of the circle. The represented 1, 2, 3, 4. They will indicate the 7 root races on the earth, because we are considering the entire circle to be earth. So that 1, 2, 3, 4 in Roman numbers, they are the 7 root races. Then within the 4th root race, where you find the Roman number 4, that is the 4th root race. There you can see at the periphery, there are subdivisions 1 to 7. They will indicate the minor races or the sub races of the 4th root race. And within each sub-root races, there are the branch or the subordinate races. Then in the diagram, you can see the axis, the north-south axis, which is indicated by N at the top and S at the bottom. So this top point N, it indicates the initial and the terminal point of evolution on our planet, Earth. Initial point is beginning of the first root race, which is given by that Roman number 1. And terminal point will be the root race 7, which is again reaching back to that terminal point N. Then if you look at the lower axial point S, that is where the development equilibrates, or it adjusts itself in each race evolution. So spiritual and material advancement are in balance. That is indicated by the north-south axis. Then we also have the equatorial points. So if you see the horizontal line, which is slightly inclined here, it is given by E. So these equatorial points, they are basically the point in the descending arc where the intellect or the mind, it overcomes spirituality because it is descending. So in the descending arc, when evolution reaches point E, then the physical mind is becoming more and more active and spirituality is decreasing. The same point E on the ascending arc. So at that point, spirituality will outstrip the intellect. So in this way, this diagram is representing the evolution of 7 races on Earth. Now, the additions which Mahatma Ji made in this diagram, he considered it for one entire Manvantar. That means all the 7 globes in one round. Therefore, at the top part where point N is given, he has written globe A. So this entire circle is one complete round, and each sector of the circle, which is given by the Roman number, it indicates one globe. So the Roman number 1, that is equal to globe A. Similarly, Roman number 2, you can consider it as globe B. So forth, coming down to Roman number 4, that is the 4th globe, which is our Earth. So Mahatma Ji has written Earth over here. Okay, and then same thing is correspondingly applied to the globes, the descending arc and the ascending arc. So evolution will begin with globe A. Then as the descending arc continues, spirituality will be dominated by materiality. At point E, matter will start dominating over the spirit. Then reaching the lower axial point S, spirit matter will equilibrate here. And then in the ascending arc, reaching the equatorial point E once again, here spirit will start dominating matter until it reaches back on globe Z, which is again near to the point N of the axis, where it would have reached its source, the highest point of evolution in one complete round. So just like it is applied to one globe, it is applied to one round, the same way, the same diagram can be applied to 7 root races. Now, based on this, he has given the supplementary notes. So it is very important to understand that how the same diagram is being applied to all the 7 stages. Now let us see what he has written in the supplementary notes. So here Mahatma Ji has mentioned Whenever any question of evolution or development in any kingdom presents itself to you, bear constantly in mind that everything comes under the septenary rule of series in their correspondence and mutual relation throughout nature. So this is the septenary law of nature. There is a commentary actually on the stanzas of Dhyan. And what that commentary says, I will just quote it over here. That commentary says that universal genesis starts from 1. It breaks into 3, then 5, and finally culminates into 7. To return back to 4, 3, and 1. So universal genesis means origin of the universe. So that origin of the universe, it begins with 1, and finally it will 1 will manifest as a septenary. Then whether that is a macrocosm or microcosm, or we consider the 7 planes, the 7 cosmic elements, or as we have seen here, 7 races, 7 globes, 7 rounds, 7 chains. So everything is manifesting as a septenary. And there is always a correspondence between each septenary set. Many of these correspondences are given in tabular form in the secret doctrine, where HPB is corresponding the 7 colors to the 7 elements, to the 7 principles. So all these things are very interesting to study, how one set of 7 relates to another set of 7. The next point, in the evolution of man, there is a topmost point, a bottom point, a descending arc, and an ascending arc, as it is spirit which transforms into itself into matter, and not matter which ascends, but matter which resolves once more into spirit. So in the diagram which we had just seen earlier, this one, when we are considering it as evolution around the earth chain, then we have already seen that evolution will begin at the topmost point N on globe A. And it also culminates at the point N, but on globe G. So this, if we consider it a round, so in the round there are 7 globes, begins at globe A and closes at globe Z. Both are at the topmost point N. So on the ascending arc, matter is getting resolved back into spirit. This topmost point N, where we have globe A, here man is very ethereal. Then on the descending arc from globe A to D, spirit is transforming into matter. And man evolves sequentially. He becomes less and less spiritual and more ethereal. This is happening from globe A to globe D in the descending arc. Then he reaches the lowest point of descending arc on globe D, our Earth. We are the lowest point in the round. From here on, ascending from globe D to G, that will be the ascending arc from globe D to G. He once again starts becoming more ethereal, losing his materiality to reach the topmost point N, where matter will be resolved once more into spirit. I think this was one of the questions in our previous session, that will man become more ethereal? And the answer is given here, that yes, this is the ascending arc. Man will lose his materiality, will start becoming more ethereal. If you remember the diagram which showed the globes of the Earth on different planes of the solar system. So the globe, after the globe D, the globe E, that will be on the astral plane. So yes, it will be, that matter will be more ethereal as compared to the physical matter. Then further he says, of course, the first race evolution and the last on a planet, as in each round, must be more ethereal, more spiritual. The fourth or the lowermost most physical, progressively, of course, in each round. So it's the same thing. Whatever applies to a round also applies to the races. So first race is most spiritual, reaching the most materiality in the fourth race. Fourth race is now already complete. Now we are in the fifth race, the Aryan race. So from here, spirituality is on the rise. In the previous slide, we applied it to the round. So it was applying to each globe in the round. Now we are speaking about it in the race. So same thing applies to race. First race is very ethereal. Fourth race was most material. And now we are again on the ascending arc from the fifth race onward, ascending in spirituality. At the same time, as physical intelligence is the last manifestation of spiritual intelligence, each evoluted race in the downward arc must be more physically intelligent than its predecessor, and each in the upward arc have a more refined form of mentality commingled with spiritual intuitiveness. So this is speaking about the races. In the descending arc of evolution of races, that means from the first root race to the fourth root race, the mind or the physical intelligence is becoming increasingly active. That is the Manas principle. And we know that this Manas principle was activated. It was activated in the middle of the third root race. Then the fourth root race men, who were the Atlantean men, they evolved and they developed very high mental ability. And they were also most material. They made stupendous progress in all arts, architecture, science, and technology. But ultimately, their materialistic nature, that is what became their downfall. Now, this fifth root race, the Aryan race, it evolved from the fifth subrace of the Atlanteans. And now man is once again moving up on this path of spirituality. Alongside his mental capability, he is also gaining in spiritual intuitiveness. This is evident. You see so many people with a lot of intuition. So this is allowing his mind to be guided increasingly by his sixth principle, his Buddhic principle. So this is the progression of spirituality on the ascending arc. The first race or stock of the first round after a solar Manvantar would then be a God-man race, if an almost impalpable shape, and so it is. Impalpable means that which is very difficult to touch. You can hardly feel it. That is impalpable. But then comes the difficulty to the student to reconcile this fact with the evolution of man from the animal, however high his form among the anthropoids. So, see, in one place, Mahatma Ji is saying that man, when that evolution started in the first round after a solar Manvantar, that first race was almost God-man. He was so spiritual and so less material or insubstantial that it was even difficult to touch him, not able to touch. But contemporary science has a different view. Science has this mistaken belief that man evolved from animals. Then how do you reconcile the two? On the one hand, it is a God-man race, which is almost imperceptible to touch. And on the other hand, if we consider that man evolved from animals, so how come he can be God-man-like? How can he be impalpable? That is the difficulty. So Mahatma Ji says, and yet it is reconcilable. This difficulty can be reconciled for whomsoever will hold religiously to a strict analogy between the works of the two worlds, the visible and the invisible world. One world, in fact, as one is working within itself, so to say. So what he is trying to indicate here, the subtle world exists and works inside the gross world. What is the gross world? It is our physical world, present on the physical plane. And the subtle world is the astral world, the mental world, the buddhic world, the subtle planes. And we know that all the planes exist together. They interpenetrate. So basically, the subtler worlds, they are within the physical world. And evolution in the gross or the physical world, it can be understood correctly if the evolution in the subtler or the inner worlds is understood. And this is due to the law of correspondence. So for this, if we contemplate how after a solar manvantar, when a new solar system is formed, then its 7 planes, the 7 planes of the solar system, they will be formed. And the earth chain, which is evolving, it will also be formed on these solar planes. So as the planes are forming, the globes of the earth are also evolving. And on these globes of the earth, man is also evolving. His constitution is also evolving because all are septenary. The planes, the globes of earth, the principles of man, everything is septenary and they are evolving together. So this is the correspondence. If we understand one, then we can understand the other. The last point. Now there must be failures in the ethereal races of the many classes of Dhyan Chauhans or Devas as well as among men. But still, as these failures are too far progressed and spiritualized to be thrown back forcibly from their Dhyan Chauhanship into the vortex of a new primordial evolution through the lower kingdoms, then this happens. So what he is indicating now, the first race in the first round after a solar manvantar is a god-man race that we have seen. It is because it is highly ethereal. It is not material, so it cannot be touched, and it is extremely spiritual. So they are referred to as Dhyan Chauhans. And just like there are failures of evolution at human stage, by analogy, there must also be failures in the evolution of Dhyan Chauhan or the Dev stage. So what do we mean by failures of evolution? See, at the human stage, what happens is that evolution is always evolving. The spirituality is progressing. The human is becoming more and more spiritual. But a failure in human stage, it can be understood that the personality is totally divorced from the higher self. That means no light of buddhi is able to shine down upon the personality and guide the lower mind. So such a case is a failure. The animal instincts take over and spiritual progress is not possible. So this is called a failure in evolution. And by analogy, the failure which we have seen in human stage, so by analogy, these kind of failures must also be there in the stage of Dhyan Chauhan or the Deva stage. But those Dhyan Chauhans or the Devas, they are very elevated beings. And they do not, even though they may be a failure, they do not have to restart their evolution from the primordial stage, working through all the lower kingdoms. They don't have to do that. Whereas this may happen in the case of man, that if there is a failure in case of man, then his cycle of reincarnation, which has proved a waste, then his entire constitution, that is, it disintegrates, his material form will return to the cosmic elements and his monad will merge back into the source. So that is what happens to man. But in case of a Dhyan Chauhan, what happens? Let us see. When a new solar system is to be evolved, these Dhyan Chauhans are, remember the Hindu allegory of the fallen devas hurled by Shiva into Antaral, who are allowed by Parbrahma to consider it as an intermediate state where they may prepare themselves by a series of rebirths in that sphere for a higher state, a new regeneration. So this is actually referred to in our Hindu scriptures that the failed devas, they will remain in an intermediary state. Antaral is nothing but antariksh or the astral plane. And they wait there. They are preparing themselves for regeneration, for their onward evolution. So, born in by the influx ahead of the elementals and remain as a latent or inactive spiritual force in the aura of the nascent world of a new system until the stage of human evolution is reached. So what happened? So in the previous solar system, there may have been some failed Dhyan Johans. So they remain in this stage of flux. Sorry, not in the stage of flux. They remain in the astral plane. And when the new solar system is being formed, then how it is being formed? It is formed by an influx or a massive inflow of spiritual force. So this spiritual force, it is sweeping even these fallen devas into its fold. Whenever a new solar system is being formed, the seven kingdoms, as we have seen, first the elemental kingdoms will evolve, and then mineral, plant, animal, etc. But these Dhyan Chohans, they are existing in the aura of that solar system even before the elemental kingdom, ahead of the elementals, and they remain there as this latent, the latent spiritual force. Then these fallen devas, they are already present in the solar system as the latent spiritual force till the time the human evolution begins. And after that, their onward evolution will begin. So once that happens, then karma has reached them and they will have to accept to the last drop in the bitter cup of retribution. Then they become an active force and commingle with the elementals or progressed entities of the pure animal kingdom to develop little by little the full type of humanity. In this commingling, they lose their high intelligence and spirituality of devship to regain them in the end of the seventh ring in the seventh round. So now the new solar system has started forming. The failed devas, which were in latent state, they become active because of the law of karma. So you see, the law of karma, it's a universal law. It is applicable even to those high beings, the Dhyan Chohans, and they have to face the cup of retribution. These failed devas, which were latent spiritual forces, they have now become active, and their evolution will commence as per their karma. So they will definitely lose all that high level of spirituality and the intelligence which is there at their stage. And their essence, it will mingle and become one with the kingdoms that are evolving on Earth in the solar system. That means the elemental kingdom or the animal kingdom. So their essence will mingle. Essence is what? The monad, Atma Buddhi. So that Atma Buddhi, which was evolving through a Dhyan Chohan, that has now become part of the essence of the elementals, or perhaps the pure animals. If he had a better karma, then perhaps pure animal. If he had a lower karma, then perhaps in the elementals. So they will evolve gradually into the human kingdom. They will, and just like the entire humanity, they will also reach the pinnacle of intelligence and spirituality in the seventh globe. That means seventh rays of the seventh globe in the seventh round. So at that stage only they will regain the intelligence and spirituality which they have lost. So this is the evolution of the devas. And it is not much has been written about the evolution of other kingdoms in the theosophical literature. Most of it dwells on the human evolution. So this evolution of devas, what are the failure cases, how they proceed onwards, this is very interesting and very informative. Then after this, there is a summation of all the rounds. So based on the diagram which we have seen, then Mahatma Ji has summed up how all the rounds are working. So thus we have in the first round an ethereal being, non-intelligent but super spiritual. Ethereal being, as we have seen, it is made of material almost which is transparent. And at this stage, mind is also not active, but buddhi is, because monad is there, Atma Buddhi. So, but mind is not active. Then in each, the subsequent races and sub-races and minor races of evolution, he grows more and more into an encased or incarnate being, but still preponderingly ethereal. So material form is starting to evolve, but it is still ethereal. And like the animal and vegetable, he develops monstrous bodies correspondential with his coarse surroundings. Now this Mahatma Ji is talking about the first round. That means all 7 globes of the first round. This is how the evolution will be. The form through which the monad is evolving in the first round, the forms are humongous. They are huge forms. And the beings of other kingdoms and also the globes of the earth chain, they have gigantic features. The evolution of the globes is happening together with the kingdoms which are evolving on it. Then comes the second round. So in the second round, man is still gigantic and ethereal, but he is growing firmer and more condensed in body, a more physical man. So his form or body, it is consolidating, but yet still less intelligent than spiritual. So spirituality is still dominant over his nascent mind. Mind is nascent, not yet developed. For mind is a slower and more difficult evolution than the physical frame, and the mind would not develop as rapidly as the body. So see, body has already started to consolidate, but and body is taking form, but mind is not keeping pace with the evolution of form. It develops more slowly as compared to the physical body. Now in the third round, how is man? In the third round, he has now a perfectly concrete or compacted body. At first, the form of a giant ape, and more intelligent or rather cunning than spiritual. So this is the third round. In the third round, the body of man is fully consolidated. It is well formed and it has an ape-like shape. For in the downward arc, he has now reached the point where his primordial spirituality is eclipsed or overshadowed by nascent mentality. So this is happening in the third round, because 3.5 rounds, it will be the middle point of the cycle. So this is by law of correspondence. There are 7 rounds. 3.5 rounds are the descending arc, and the next 3.5 rounds are going to be the ascending arc. So in this the inherent spirituality of man, that is the real man, that is now being hidden, and by his next principle, manas, that is evolving. So we can see how within each round, one by one, his principles are evolving. In the first round, he is most spiritual. That corresponds to Atma. Second round, he is still spiritual. We can correspond it to Buddhi. In the third round, physical intelligence. That is Manas. And now in the fourth round, the fourth principle, desire principle, calm, that is maturing. So each principle matures in the corresponding rounds. And same applies to races and the globes. Next point. In the last half of his third round, his gigantic stature decreases. His body improves in texture. Perhaps the microscope might help to demonstrate this. And he becomes a more rational being, though still more an ape than a deva form. So with this, with the next round, Now his size is becoming smaller and the mind principle is maturing, making him more and more rational. He is becoming logical and analytical. So this is about the third round. Third round means that life has passed through all the 7 globes of the earth chain for the third time. That is the third round. And a round is a huge period. It is a manvantar. That means the period between 2 manus. How these manus are there, at the beginning and the end of each round, there are manus. So at the beginning of the round, there is a root manu, and at the beginning of the round, there is a seed manu, and at the end, there is a root manu. After which the planet will go into a minor pralay, which means now because 3 rounds are over, so it means that 6 manus have completed their reign, one at the beginning and one at the end. So for 3 rounds, 6 manus have completed their reign. And now in this 4th round, the 7th manu, who is called Vaivasvat Manu, he is reign. Life is passing for the 4th time through all these globes, A, B, C, and now it is on globe D. So this is the 4th round. About the 4th round, Mahatmaji mentioned, intellect has an enormous development in this round. That means physical intelligence, the lower mind or the calm manas, that has an enormous development. The dumb races will acquire our human speech on our globe. So language communication evolved, on which from the 4th race, language is perfected and knowledge of physical things increases. So working of our rational mind has increased and languages have also developed. In fact, there is a whole study of how languages have evolved on Earth. So in this 4th round, at this halfway point of the 4th round, humanity passes the axial point of a minor manvantric axis. So in the diagram which we had seen, the north-south axis, this axial point is the lowermost point in the 4th round, where spirit matter or the development, it equilibrates as applied to the 7 rounds. Okay. So moreover, at the middle point of every major or root race evolution of each round, man passes the equator of his course on that planet. So these equatorial points we have already seen in the diagram, that where the intellect or the mind, it overcomes spirituality. That is the equatorial point on the descending arc, because mind is overcoming spirituality. And in the ascending arc, spirituality will outstrip the mind. So this same rule applies to the whole evolution or the 7 rounds of the minor Manvantar. So 7 divided by 2, that is 3.5 rounds. 3.5 rounds descending, then 3.5 rounds ascending. So for this, if it will be more clear if you refer to the diagram again. So I have shown the diagram again, just like it is applying to the globes, or same way it is applying to the rounds. So first round, second round, 3.5 round, that is descending. Then the next 3.5 rounds will be ascending. Currently we are in the 4th round. So this we need to keep in mind again and again with respect to this diagram. Going back to that slide 34, the second point. At this point then, the world teems with the result of intellectual activity. So we are talking about the 4th round. Okay. So in the 4th round, at this half point, this middle point, the world teems with the result of intellectual activity and spiritual decrease. In the first half of the 4th race, science, arts, literature, and philosophy were born, eclipsed in one nation, reborn in another. Civilization and intellectual development whirling in septenary cycles at the best. So we have read about how this art, science, technology, everything flourished during the Atlantean root race. That was the fourth root race. And there was decline in spirituality and morality. And their sub-races and branch races of this Atlantean race, they were the rise and fall of civilizations which were passing through their own septenary cycles. So whenever we are talking about these, we can refer to the diagram. Then we move further. While it is but in the latter half that the spiritual ego will begin its real struggle with body and mind to manifest its transcendental powers. So out of the 7 rounds, 3.5 rounds are completed. Now in this 4th round, it marks the ascending arc and the beginning of the struggle between the higher and lower self of man. For the spirit will now dominate matter. So there is this struggle. Till now, matter has been dominating spirit. So Mahatma Ji says, who will help the forthcoming gigantic struggle? Who? Happy the man who helps a helping hand. This is a very deep meaning statement. Happy the man who helps a helping hand. See, who is the helping hand for humanity? The helping hand is the great white brotherhood, the perfected men. They are helping the struggling man in his spiritual progress by pouring their spiritual forces. They are the guardian wall. Then there are also those people, we say the people who have turned from pravritti marg to nivritti marg. So those people are helping in this great work. They are overcoming their lower nature and they are working from their higher self. Centered in their higher self, they are working. So in this way, they are helping the elder brothers, the great white brotherhood. And in the process, they are also speeding up their spiritual progress. So they are happy. This is the great learning and lesson for us, that man has to help man. There is no God outside of man. So no external God is going to come to our help. Each one has to win his own battle. And he alone has to help his higher self to win this battle and make his personality submit to his spiritual ego. So that is the kind of struggle which will happen within each one's own self. Then in the 5th round, the same relative development and the same struggle continues. What Mahatma Ji is saying about the 5th round, we can get a clue because he mentioned that Plato and Confucius were the 5th rounders. So people will be more and more of such higher nature, like those men. And the 6th and 7th round, about these, we need not speak. This is what Mahatma Ji mentioned in the letter. But still, we can have some clue about this. Lord Gautam Buddha, he was a 6th round person. So we can think about it that humanity will largely move closer to his Buddha nature. In this 6th round, everyone will move closer to their Buddha nature. And at the end of 7th round, all of humanity will achieve Buddhahood. That will mark the completion of the earth chain. And then the planetary pralay will begin. So with this, we complete this letter number 66, in which Mahatma Ji has given us a very nice overview of all the rounds and the evolution that is happening through these rounds. So with this, I will stop now. And I will request Meenakshi ji to give us the translation in Hindi.
Namaste. Thank you so much, sister. आज हम लेटर नंबर 66 का शेष भाग ले रहे हैं. मास्टर कहते हैं, संस्कृत से अंग्रेजी में अपरिष्कृत रूप से पुनः अनुवादित किए गए हमारे गहन रहस्यमयी पारिभाषिक शब्द हमारे लिए उतने ही भ्रामक हैं जितने कि वे आपके लिए, विशेषकर मास्टर एम के लिए. जब तक कि आपको लिखने के लिए हम में से कोई एक उनकी कलम एक सिद्ध हस्त के रूप में नहीं लेता है और उसे प्रथम से लेकर आखिरी शब्द तक उसका उपयोग नहीं करता है, तब उनकी भी किसी अन्य व्यक्ति की तरह भूल करने की संभावना है। हम 5वें राउंड में नहीं है, लेकिन 5वें राउंड के पुरुष पिछले कुछ हजार सालों से आ रहे हैं। लेकिन पृथ्वी पर एक राउंड में मनुष्य ने बिताए कई लाखों वर्षों में से 1 मिलियन की तुलना में इतना छोटा समय काल के मायने क्या है? आगे मास्टर ज्वालकुल एक आकृति देते हैं जिसे मास्टर के एच जिसका वर्णन करते हैं कि यह आकृति किसी ग्रह पर या हमारी पृथ्वी पर मानवता के विकास को दर्शाती है। मनुष्य 7 प्रमुख जाति या रूट रेसेस में 49 माइनर रेसेस और सब ऑर्डिनेट रेसेस या ऑफशूट्स से विकसित होता है। उससे निकलने वाली ब्रांचलेट रेसेस को यहाँ नहीं दिखाया है। आकृति में एरोज विकास के संवेग द्वारा ली गई दिशा को दर्शाता है। रोमन अंक यानी 7 प्रमुख या रूट रेसेस और 1, 2, 3, 4 जो लिखे हैं वह माइनर रेसेस है। स्मॉल a जो है यहाँ सब ऑर्डिनेट या ऑफशूट रेसेस है, उपशाखाएं है। पॉइंट n ग्रह पर विकास का प्रारंभिक और अंतिम बिंदु दर्शाया है। पॉइंट s एक्सियल पॉइंट को दर्शाता है जहां विकास संतुलित होता है या प्रत्येक रेस की उन्नति को समायोजित करता है। पॉइंट E वह इक्वेटोरियल पॉइंट है जहां डिसेंडिंग आर्क या अवरोही चाप का इंटेलेक्ट यानी मन आध्यात्मिकता पर हावी होता है और आरोही चाप में आध्यात्मिकता मन को पीछे छोड़ देती है, मन पर विजय प्राप्त करती है। आगे मास्टर सप्लीमेंट्री नोट्स देते हैं। जब भी किसी किंगडम में उत्क्रांति या विकास का कोई प्रश्न आपको आता है, तब सतत यह ध्यान में रखें कि समग्र प्रकृति में सब कुछ उसके पारस्परिक संबंध और अनुरूपता में सेप्टेनरी रूल की श्रृंखला के तहत आते हैं। मनुष्य की उत्क्रांति में एक सर्वोच्च बिंदु, तल का बिंदु, अवरोही चाप और आरोही चाप रहता है। यह स्पिरिट है जो मैटर में स्वयं को परिवर्तित करता है और मैटर पुनः स्पिरिट में विलीन होता है। निश्चित ही एक ग्रह पर प्रत्येक राउंड में पहली और आखिरी रेस का विकास अधिक इथेरियल होगा, अधिक आध्यात्मिक होगा। चौथी रेस या सबसे निम्नतम का विकास सबसे भौतिक रूप में होगा। हालांकि प्रत्येक राउंड में प्रगतिशील और उसी तरह जैसे शारीरिक बुद्धिमत्ता आध्यात्मिक बुद्धि की आवरणित अभिव्यक्ति है, वह अवरोही चाप की यानी अधोगमन की प्रत्येक विकसित रेस अपने पूर्ववर्ती की तुलना में शारीरिक रूप से अधिक बुद्धिमान होनी चाहिए और आरोही चाप की प्रत्येक रेस में आध्यात्मिक अंतःप्रज्ञा युक्त अधिक सुसंस्कृत रूप की मानसिकता है। सौर मनवंतर के बाद की प्रथम राउंड की प्रथम रेस लगभग अगोचर अस्पष्ट आकार की एक ईश्वरीय मानव जाति होगी, लेकिन फिर एक अध्येता को मनुष्य और प्राणी की उत्क्रांति के तथ्य को स्वीकारने में कठिनाई आती है, चाहे मनुष्य सदृश जाति में वह कितना भी उच्च क्यों न हो। और फिर भी यह उसके लिए स्वीकार्य होगा जो एक जगत के दृश्य और अदृश्य ऐसे 2 जगतों के कार्यों के बीच समरूपता की दृढ़तापूर्वक धारणा रखेगा। वास्तव में कहे तो कोई अपने ही भीतर कार्यशील है। अब ध्यान चौहानों या देवों के और साथ ही मनुष्यों के बीच की कई श्रेणियों के इथेरियल रेसेस में विफलताएं होती है, हो सकती है। निचले किंगडम्स के माध्यम से एक नए प्रारंभिक विकास के भंवर में ध्यान चौहान पद से जबरन वापस फेंक देने के लिए यह विफलताएं बहुत ही प्रगतिशील और आध्यात्मिक है, लेकिन फिर भी यह होता है। जब एक नया सौर मंडल विकसित होगा, तब यह ध्यान चौहान इन्फ्लक्स के जरिए एलिमेंटल्स के पहले जन्म लेते हैं और नए उभरते जगत के आभा मंडल में वह एक अव्यक्त या निष्क्रिय आध्यात्मिक शक्ति के रूप में रहते हैं, जब तक कि मानव विकास का चरण शुरू नहीं होता। तब कर्म उन तक पहुंचता है और उन्हें प्रतिफल के कड़वे प्याले की अंतिम बूंद तक को स्वीकारना होगा। ध्यान चौहान के बारे में मास्टर कहते हैं, शिव द्वारा अंतराल में झोंके गए पतित देवों के हिंदू रूपक को याद करें, जिन्हें परब्रह्म द्वारा इसे एक मध्यवर्ती स्थिति क्षेत्र के रूप में मानने की अनुमति है, जहां वे उच्च स्थिति पाने के लिए, नए उत्थान के लिए उस क्षेत्र में पुनर्जन्म की श्रृंखला द्वारा स्वयं को तैयार कर सकते हैं। तत्पश्चात आगे मास्टर कहते हैं कि तत्पश्चात वे सक्रिय शक्ति बन जाते हैं और धीरे धीरे मानवता के पूर्ण प्रकार को विकसित करने के लिए वे एलिमेंटल्स के साथ या शुद्ध पशु वर्ग की विकसित इकाइयों के साथ सम्मिश्रित होते हैं। इस सम्मिश्रण में वे देवत्व की अपनी उच्च बुद्धिमत्ता और आध्यात्मिकता को खो देते हैं और 7वें राउंड के 7वें रिंग या रेस के अंत में पुनः प्राप्त कर लेते हैं। इस प्रकार फर्स्ट राउंड में वह इथरीय जीव होता है जो बुद्धिमत्ता रहित है लेकिन अति आध्यात्मिक है। विकास क्रम की प्रत्येक आगामी रेसेस और सब रेसेस और माइनर रेसेस में वह अधिक से अधिक आवरणित या साकारित जीव में विकसित होता है, लेकिन फिर भी प्रमुखता से इथरीय होता है और उसके अप्रगत परिवेश के अनुरूप पशु और वनस्पति की तरह वह विशालकाय शरीर विकसित करता है। सेकंड राउंड में वह अभी भी विशालकाय और इथरीय है, लेकिन शरीर अधिक ठोस और ज्यादा सघन होते जा रहा है। एक अधिक स्थूल मनुष्य फिर भी आध्यात्मिकता की तुलना में कम बुद्धिमान, क्योंकि शरीर रचना की तुलना में मन का विकास अति धीमा और अति कठिन होता है और शरीर के जैसा मन तेजी से विकसित नहीं होता है। थर्ड राउंड में उसका शरीर अब पूरी तरह से ठोस या सुगठित है। प्रथमतः वह एक विशाल मानव सदृश जानवर के रूप में है और आध्यात्मिकता की तुलना में अधिक बुद्धिमान है, चालाक है, क्योंकि अवरोही चाप में यानी अधोगमन में वह अब उस बिंदु पर पहुंच गया है जहां उसकी मूल आध्यात्मिकता नई उभरती मानसिकता द्वारा ग्रस्त या आच्छादित हो गई है। इस तीसरे राउंड के उत्तरार्ध में उसकी विशालकाय आकृति कम हो जाती है, उसके शरीर की बनावट में सुधार होता है, वह अधिक तर्कसंगत बनता है, हालांकि वह अभी भी एक देव पुरुष से अधिक एक मानव सदृश जानवर है। फोर्थ राउंड में इस राउंड में बुद्धिमत्ता का विपुल मात्रा में विकास हुआ है। हमारे ग्लोब पर बेजुबान रेसेस हमारी मानवीय बोली अर्जित करेगी। चौथी रेस से भाषा में पारंगतता होती है और भौतिक वस्तुओं का ज्ञान बढ़ता है। चौथे राउंड के इस मध्य बिंदु पर मानवता लघु मन्वंतरिक चक्र के एक्सियल पॉइंट को पार करती है। इसके अलावा प्रत्येक राउंड के प्रत्येक रूट रेस के विकास के मध्य बिंदु पर मनुष्य उस ग्रह पर अपने मार्गक्रमण की मध्य रेखा से गुजरता है। यही नियम पूरे विकास क्रम या लघु मनवंतर के 7 राउंड्स पर लागू होता है। 7 राउंड्स को 2 से विभाजित करने पर 3.5 राउंड होते हैं। इस बिंदु पर दुनिया मानसिक गतिविधि और आध्यात्मिक घटाव के परिणामों से सराबोर होती है। चौथे राउंड के पूर्वार्ध में विज्ञान, कला, साहित्य और दर्शन विकसित हुए, एक राष्ट्र में लुप्त हुए तो दूसरे में उपजे। सभ्यता, संस्कृति और बौद्धिक विकास बाकी की तरह सेप्टेनरी साइकिल्स सप्त चक्रों में घूमती है। यह केवल उत्तरार्ध में ही अपनी पारलौकिक शक्तियों को प्रकट करने के लिए स्पिरिचुअल ईगो यानी बुद्धि मनस, शरीर और मन के साथ अपना वास्तविक संघर्ष शुरू करेगा। इस आगामी प्रचंड विशाल संघर्ष में कौन मदद करेगा? कौन? वह खुश नसीब है जो मदद के लिए हाथ बढ़ाता है। पांचवें राउंड में उसी प्रकार से विकास और वही संघर्ष जारी रहेगा। 6th और 7th राउंड के बारे में हमें बोलने की जरूरत नहीं है। थैंक यू। नमस्ते।
Thank you, Meenakshi ji, for this beautiful translation and such deep-rooted teachings which have been given to mankind. We should be very grateful to the masters to receive this knowledge from them. And now our session is open for discussion and any question answers.
हेलो मैडम, नमस्ते।
Namaste.
ये आपने ये कहा है आखिरी में कि ध्यान चौहान जो है 7 राउंड पूरे करने के बाद जब फिर से दूसरा राउंड ए में आते हैं तो हायर कर्मा और लोअर कर्मा के हिसाब से काम करते हैं। मतलब हायर और जब ध्यान चौहान हो गए तो सभी कर्म उनके खत्म हो गए, तो सभी अच्छे कर्म रहेंगे ना, तभी तो ध्यान चौहान होंगे।
जब एवोल्यूशन शुरू हुआ तो उनका ध्यान चौहान यानी उनके दो ही प्रिंसिपल्स हैं, आत्मा बुद्धि। लेकिन जिस प्रकार ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन में फेलियर्स होते हैं तो बाय करस्पॉन्डेंस ध्यान चौहान के एवोल्यूशन में भी फेलियर्स होते होंगे। हमें नहीं पता कि उनका फेलियर किस प्रकार से होता है, मगर इतना जरूर महात्मा जी बतलाते हैं कि उनका जब फेलियर होता है तो ऐसा नहीं है कि उनके प्रिंसिपल्स फिर से कॉस्मिक प्रिंसिपल्स में मिल जाएं और उनको लेवल 0 से स्टार्ट करना पड़े। तो वो एज अ पोटेंशियल स्पिरिचुअल फोर्स एस्ट्रल प्लेन में बने रहते हैं, और जब नया सोलर सिस्टम कमेंस होता है तो उस इन्फ्लक्स, उसके फोर्स के साथ वे उस नए सोलर सिस्टम के ऑरा का हिस्सा बन जाते हैं। और वहां से जब मानव का ह्यूमन एवोल्यूशन शुरू होता है तब वे भी एक्टिव हो जाते हैं। जो अभी तक पोटेंशियल थे वे एक्टिव हो जाते हैं और उनकी जो एसेंस है वो शुरू करती है एलिमेंटल किंगडम से इवॉल्व होना, उसके साथ मिंगल हो जाती है, या तो एलिमेंटल किंगडम में या एनिमल किंगडम में। तो ये फेल्ड केसेस हैं ध्यान चौहान के।
ओके मैडम, मतलब जिस स्टेज पर वो थे उस स्टेज से फिर वहीं से शुरू हो जाता है।
एज अ ध्यान चौहान वो बहुत ही ऊंची लेवल पे थे, ये बात आपकी सही है, स्पिरिचुअलिटी में, इंटेलिजेंस और विजडम में। लेकिन फेलियर होने के बाद वो काफी नीचे की लेवल पे आ जाते हैं, जैसा कि आपने देखा कि उन्हें फिर से एलिमेंटल या एनिमल किंगडम से इवॉल्व होना पड़ता है। तो उनकी
ओके,
वो
थैंक यू।
स्पिरिचुअलिटी। जी थैंक यू।
जल्दी मतलब वो स्टार्ट मैंने वो इवॉल्व हो जाते हैं
हाँ,
उसके
उन्हें फिर
बाद।
से ये साइकिल्स के थ्रू जाना पड़ेगा। दे हैव टू इवॉल्व अगेन थ्रू दीज साइकिल्स।
ओके, थैंक
Thank you. If anybody would like to add in this explanation, maybe Shinde ji would like to explain something in a better way.
Yes.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste, namaste, Vibha ji. I must thank you. Very nicely you have explained. This is
Thank
all
you.
our theosophical perspective. Whatever is given in our theosophical literature. But when we consider the evolution in two perspectives, from below to above and above to below. So there are two perspectives actually. We are which perspective one advocates, it depends. So as science says, evolution from simple cell to the complex human being. So it is from the below to above. So material evolution, and the theosophy says from the ethereal. And in this course, these are the two perspectives of the evolution. Evolution is the divine plan. No doubt, there is evolution. And according to the divine mind, how it is carried out, whether from the above or from below, that we are having two perspectives. But in fact, it is said the main principle of evolution is from within outside. So that is what you explained. It is always within outside. And what is within, we are not yet gone deep into it. So when we go deep into it, and how there is failure of the Dhyan Chauhans, because according to the divine plan, according to the divine mind, whatever it was planning, whether to bring from the above into the matter or from matter to above, in that we don't know exactly what problem is. But whatever is theosophy explains, that gives some clue to go deeper and deeper into this. But Krishnamurti says there is no evolution now, there will be revolution. So that we have to think of, because our DNA has got a knot, and knot is because of our behavior, thinking, emotions, and only 95% of the DNA code is not used, only 5% is used. So still there is a lot of potentiality in our human DNA. And if you want to bring some change in your DNA, then you have to meditate in that. You must to go within. And the principle of evolution is from within outside. So when we meditate and bring certain changes in our neuro connections, perhaps there will be more speed to the evolution towards the spirituality. That is what I want to just add, but you have explained very nicely. I am very happy, because theosophy explains many things very nicely, but one has to go still deeper and deeper in that aspect. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
No, sir, every time we need your insight into these deep topics. Thank you so much for being present here always.
Now I am always present because I like your talk. Thank you.
Sir. Thank you.
You are an asset to us.
Thank you, sir. Sir, and on this evolution, I would also like to add one more point. Many of you must have read this or studied this in the theosophical literature, that the constitution of man as it is given, he is a septenary being, and his evolution is happening at 3 levels. One, his form is evolving, his body, the physical form is evolving. Second, his mind, the mental evolution, that is happening. And third, the monad, that is also going on its journey. So there is monadic evolution, there is mental evolution, and there is evolution of the form. So this is how this septenary complex that we are, this is how we are evolving.
Yes, this aspect, 3 streams of evolution, theosophy speaks about.
Yes.
Spiritual evolution, biological evolution, and moral or intellectual evolution.
Yes.
Yeah. If we, and all these are going simultaneously now. I think this plan they have accepted and supporting this plan. The divine mind is supporting this plan. And we must support, we must act to support the divine plan of evolution. Yes, your 3 streams of evolution, we accept it.
Right. Thank you so much. Would anybody like to ask something or add their perspective? Okay, then we'll bring the session to a close. Yes, Sheetalji, you wanted to mention something?
Mention what I always ask, ma'am. All I have doubts. हम ये फिर 4 युगों को कैसे डिवाइड करते हैं इन ग्लोबलिस्ट में?
4 युगों को?
हाँ, सतयुग जो है, त्रेता युग है, द्वापर युग है, and basically you. So,
Sheetal ji, this time cycle itself is a very big study. उसको हम फिर कभी डिटेल में लेंगे. और these specify basically the consciousness of man. सतयुग में कितनी spirituality है, फिर त्रेता, द्वापर, कलयुग. So this cycle happens in every larger cycle. There are cycles within cycles. So we'll discuss this later on, and how the division of time is given as per this Hindu timeline in the Hindu scriptures. That also we can discuss maybe in another forum.
yes, ma'am. And that too with the globe A to G also, how it coincides.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome. So we will end this session now with the closing prayer. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Sarvesham Swastirabhavatu Sarvesham Shantirabhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu Lokaha Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukhabhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you all for joining. Namaste.